The information provided is not a substitute for legal and other professional advice where the facts and circumstances warrant. People should always consult their own legal or other professional advisors and discuss the facts and circumstances that apply to their specific circumstances. The information shared on Ask the Landlord is for educational purposes only.
Hello to everyone listening out there. We're back with another episode of Ask the Landlord with our favorite landlord, Albert Dweck. I'm Melissa. I'm one of Albert's producers and a former New York City, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and Lafayette, Louisiana renter. And together, we're going to be asking this landlord some questions. All right, Albert, today's question, I had to get a little help from the artificial intelligence out there. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, what are 3 common questions for landlords in New York City? And I'm going to go to the second one because that is very applicable to the question I was going to ask you. And this is ChatGPT's number 2 question to ask landlords in New York City is, what are the rules around security deposits in New York City? However, my question that you can also answer is, what are some obstacles that renters deal with when moving from one apartment to another so we know how to avoid them in regards to security deposits? And feel free to answer as you will. Longest question yet. Go ahead.
I got it. Good question. Melissa, you should speak to this. I mean, you've moved around, so you're an expert in
I forgot about my DC days. Isn't
in
that
different
funny?
places. Yeah. So, I think part of look, moving is hard. I mean, it's
a pain in the butt.
It's a pain, because you get settled in your place and you really want to be at peace and happy, and moving is an interruption, and it's like a reset. For those of us that have been through it, and many of us, it's part of life, but it takes time to settle. Yeah, I get that. Generally, when you're a renter, the landlord is going to take some damage deposit, security deposit, what have you, so that they can cover any damages beyond wear and tear for the apartment. So what you should do is when you move in, do an inspection and make a notation with the landlord before you really touch anything of the condition of the place, so that you understand that's how you're going to have to deliver it back in that condition.
Okay? And that it's in writing. That's important.
And or take pictures. But we have like a move in, move out checklist usually where, hey, this is how it was when I moved in. When I moved into a place, there was a scratch on the floor, the big one. Like, that's not like normal wear and tear. And I just want to make sure that that I didn't do that scratch. That major scratch. So generally, you're expected to. You could use things, right, in the normal course of doing things. You could use them, right, and you're expected to essentially deliver the place like you got it, except for the normal wear and tear. So, you have to read your lease or ask your landlord. Sometimes, let's say you can't obviously take down a wall, right? You can't, if you're going to paint the wall black, it's an issue, with the landlord. So those are things you want to ask permission for, if you're ever going to do something like that. So generally, you're expected to keep things in the same place. Things that are installed, you should ask questions about, because you're not supposed to change them or touch them because they're part of the apartment. At the same time, you have to exercise care in taking care of them so that they do work and that you don't abuse them. Right? I don't know. You could think of things like that, but doing strange things to appliances that shouldn't be done and you're causing them to break, that's an issue.
Right. Like replacing the front of a stove if you want like a wood paneling or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm sure there are things that you and I can't think of that people have done to things that shouldn't have been done, and then that causes them to break for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but those create stories for a future podcast.
You change a chandelier or something like a light fixture, and you don't know what you're doing, and you blow a fuse, let's say, and then you
Okay,
need an
that's
electrician.
usually So that's usually a minor thing, but
Yeah.
um,
Oh, you're saying
let's
major
say the
things.
landlord had some kind of fixture and you changed it, you have to put back the fixture,
Right. Right.
right? So or look, accidents happen too. Let's say you put a hole in the wall. So anyway, a good landlord will let's say you walk in, you move into the apartment, and you made a list of all these things, and let's say there are some things that's, oh, there's a nick, do I have to do anything? Like, when you rent a car and you go around the car and you're like, oh, that's bump,
Mm-hmm.
that bump, those things. So that's how to do it. Now the landlord, but then you also need to like make the apartment presentable on the way out. The landlord knows that they have to clean and paint and
Right.
freshen it up, but sometimes they become excessive where that was like beyond what should have been done. People write on the walls or make holes or do crazy things that and then that has to come out of the security deposit, unfortunately.
So, do you have any suggestions on like a few tools or like little things that renters can get to make that move out process a little more seamless?
Yeah, I do. But so I just wanted to answer that question first. Like, it's regular wear and tear is normal, understood. Or communicating is very important as to if you want to do something, do it in advance. If something happens, and the common sense I think makes sense here. It's like, oh, just have common sense. In New York City, uh, security deposits have to be returned within 14 days of move out,
Mm-hmm.
which is a new rule. Other states very similar. There's like within a certain amount of time. New York City tends to be more quicker on that. Again, usually the landlord would have a list of things and what they cost on even going in. It's like, oh, if I have to redo the wall, this is how much we're going to charge. Some
Mm-hmm.
landlords have that.
I
So
have a question.
yeah,
Why, this might be a whole nother episode, but where did they come up with the security deposit is 1 month's rent? Because that's the case, right? A security deposit is usually 1 month's rent.
I agree with you. First of all, there's services now that
Oh, yeah.
you could actually pay for, like insurance, instead of putting up the 1 month's rent,
Yeah.
which even give the landlord more coverage than 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great question. And security deposits tend to be a very inefficient. The whole thing is very
Interesting.
inefficient because let's say you're renting for 5 years, just as something to think about, right?
Yeah. What's
And
one
you
month?
put, no, that's also, we can talk about that, but you're renting for 5 years, you put 1 month, and then, over time your rent increases, that your security deposit is supposed to also increase, okay.
Ah.
Anyway, so now but essentially your security deposit has been sitting in a bank account for 5 years. The landlord's not using it and you're not using it. No one's using it. It's just sitting there doing nothing.
Is it earning interest with a high yield savings account?
No, not even. Not even. It's like, it's so marginal. Okay.
We should change this.
So that's what companies came around and did and said, listen, this is so dumb, because most of the time these security deposits sit in these bank accounts, nothing happens with them, and they go back and they're like, and no one uses them. The landlord doesn't use them and the tenant doesn't use them. So it's so dumb because people part with this money and it just sits there and I'm like, oh, so companies came up and they said, let's do these insurance policies so that people don't have to come up with this money, and that, it even gives more protection for landlords. So those are interesting solutions that do make sense, which are good. Frankly, better for everybody because, you don't have to come up with so much money, and the landlord doesn't have to worry about parking it, and the landlord has better protection and the tenant has better protection. So it's so great for everybody. So that's an innovation. That's something that's been good with so it's called, there are various services that do that today. As far as how much, it's a balance between what people can afford to pay, what's appropriate,
Hmm.
So there's a limit. There's a legal limit to the amount of security deposit that a landlord is allowed to collect in certain states. In New York, it's a month. In other states I used to do business, I would collect more if the tenant had poor credit or something like that. But I would have them like pay additional prepaid months of rent or things like that. But those now have been the laws around those things in New York. There's really just a limit to the amount of security deposit and advanced rent that you could charge. Um, so it's a balance between what the tenant can actually pay and what makes sense for them to pay.
Do you know when that 14-day rule came into play for returning the security
A couple of years
deposit? Is
ago.
this
Yeah,
a couple years?
yeah.
Ooh, so that wasn't there when I was there. Interesting.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
ChatGPT says that. That's in their
And,
answer.
and before that, it was like a month. It was like a month or 60 days. So it's not it's
Wow.
not it's not that long. You know.
Is that a big change for you?
Yeah, I mean it's not a big deal typically. Most of the security deposits we have go back, like I was telling you. Um, but you get into a situation where someone moves out of the apartment's a mess. This is part of your question. Is let's say you win the lottery, no problem, and you decide to go to an island in the Pacific, and that's it. You like changing your life. You great, but you left behind an apartment full of stuff. Now,
Right.
now that has nothing to do with normal wear and tear. You just left me with a ton of stuff that I got to dispose of, and that costs money.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm going to take that as security deposit,
That happened to me once.
right? It happens.
Yeah. No, it happens.
You're like, that couch, I don't want it, but I'm not going to tell the landlord I don't want it, but I'm just going to leave it there. I'm like, oh, okay. What do I do? I mean,
So for one couch, that's a big deal, right?
totally. I mean, isn't it
Yeah.
a big deal for you? That's why you didn't take it with you.
I left a dresser, like a nice dresser, and I contacted the super and I was like, "Here, please take this. Like, thank you." And I even left like $20 or $40. I think I left like
Yeah,
$40
but
on
that's
top with
thoughtful.
some.
People don't do
I
that.
know, but I still got a lot taken out. Maybe he didn't communicate with the landlord. I don't know. I did not. I only communicated with the super, and that was probably my fault.
Yeah. So,
So
so
bad.
making sure that the place is
How you found it?
how you found it. So then the question is like, oh, like Al, I'm not. How do I do that? So I have a friend. He's very creative, and he came up with this idea, and he calls it the buck box, right?
Oh my gosh.
So it's like a move out kit. So
Okay.
basically, it's everything, right, that you need to do
Hang
to hang
on.
on to your security deposit,
All
right?
right. Are we going to get
So
an unboxing?
so let's and it's a prototype. So
Okay.
it's something that we're playing around with. Maybe we'll sell it on Ask the Landlord. Um,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit DIY project,
And we love a
um,
DIY project nowadays.
right? So there's a little note in there, and it's
Cool.
spackling paste,
Ooh, spackle. For everyone who doesn't know, spackle fills in holes of like nails and things like that.
right?
And it's
Spackle,
pink and then dries white.
touch up paint.
Sandpaper, touch up paint. Okay.
Okay,
So maybe you can order specific colors of paint in the box as like a future idea.
good idea. You know, it has to match
Right.
your
Oh, a magic eraser?
magic eraser.
I used like 10 of those getting scuff marks off the
Dude, you
walls.
need these. You need magic eraser all
They're
day.
so good.
Best, right? Uh, paper towel. I don't know. Okay.
Oh, to smooth the spackle. It's like
A palette knife. What's it called? Right?
palette
What is it
knife.
called? A spackle thingy.
Yeah, it's like a flat spatula, but not really.
Okay. It's good for making eggs also. So
I wouldn't do a
scraper
scraper
thing.
thingy.
There you go. Then this is carpet
Oh, wow,
cleaning
there's a,
solution. Carpet
what
cleaning
is that?
solution. Carpet cleaning solution.
Oh, carpet. Hopefully we don't have carpet in our apartments, but yeah, that's good.
No, you have to have carpet in your apartments.
Okay. I'm just not a fan of carpet.
I know, but in a previous episode, you know that 80% of your apartment has to be carpeted.
Wait, what? Wait, please repeat that. I'm sorry.
Wait, check your lease if you ever rented an apartment. Many leases require that you cover 80% of your flooring with carpets. Now, unless someone complains, many people don't do that. But
And
that
that's
would
for
make it,
sound
that helps it with sound, correct?
in
Isn't that
any
cool? You didn't know
apart.
that.
No,
Many,
I mean
many, most
my jaw's
apartments,
on the floor for those
no, most
listening.
apartments, when you read your lease, we dealt with this in a prior episode, but when you read your lease, like let's say someone above you is making noise, I'll bet you take out the lease of your lease, you could even look at it and it says like, oh, 80% of your apartment has to be carpeted by you.
Is that the responsibility of the tenant or the landlord?
Well, whatever it says in the lease, usually it's the tenant has to put it in. Or if it's in, the tenant has to maintain it.
With that carpet solution that the guy
Right.
is in the box.
Wood repair kit, like if there's
Oh,
wood,
that's fun.
like, wood floors or things like that. And, ooh, that's a little juicy. That's spilled. I don't even know what that is. Oh. And then it says sandpaper
Okay, good to sand the spackle.
and for bigger holes, I think like a mesh thing. I don't know.
Oh, that could be for screens.
Oh, maybe.
I think you put it on screens and you can sometimes use a hair dryer and it like blends to the screen.
Melissa, you're very
Thank you. I think that was a Shark Tank product back in the day.
You're
Not
very
that
handy.
one, but
You're very
I
handy.
try.
So
Very
that's
interesting.
so that's
So we're
the-
going to do another episode on carpet because I have a million questions on that.
Okay.
None of my apartments had carpet in New York. I'm shocked.
Well, doesn't mean
Or
mean
rugs.
that
Like
it
I didn't
doesn't
put a
mean that
rug
the
in.
lease, a runner. It doesn't mean that the lease doesn't say that, and it doesn't mean that you have to do anything right now. But that's what it is.
Wow. Very cool. So that's a great little box. And so those are just some tools that I definitely recommend spackle for moving out because it just gives the appearance to your landlord that you care, you're trying, you're making an effort, and hopefully they see that, right?
Yeah. So it's a little cute box, and I'm putting everything back in now, closing it up. So maybe it's something that will feature, but it's a good thing to think about. It's like you want to make an effort to show that you're just not leaving a mess.
Right.
And I think that goes a long way. And usually, I didn't say this, but usually before you move out, and if you want to get your security deposit back, you prepare accordingly, and you have the landlord come in and do an inspection.
Oh.
And it's called a move out inspection, where you say, okay, listen, I just want you to look at it because I want to get my security deposit back. And you document that. And then you tell the guy, listen, here's where you send my security deposit to. Everything's good. There's no issue. This is no more wear and tear, whatever, boom. And then the landlord can tell you, no, you got to fix that, or you can't leave that dresser or whatever. And I'm going to charge you. Oh, could you just remove that? You make an agreement, take it, whatever. Again, communicate.
Right. I've never did that. I didn't know you could have the landlord come
No.
before you move out.
That's the thing.
I never
to do.
knew that. I always just take a video.
Video is good. But
I take a video. That's my suggestion of everything.
A video is good. Usually there's someone like the super, and you could bring them, have a meeting so that they could see the place, and you're going to give them the keys. Who are you giving the keys to? What do you leave the keys?
I've left. I don't know. Leave the keys in the apartment.
I like to do like official sign off. I checked the apartment. Did you check it? Maybe have them sign off on it so that you can get, the security deposit back. Because there are bad landlords out there that, and I've seen this, they take the security deposits. They come up with BS things, or they charge more. Someone came to me the other day. And I really asked the landlord, this is someone, I get these calls, that's why we started the podcast. Someone called me the other day, says, my landlord, I had $3,000 security deposit and they didn't give me my security deposit back and they charged me more money. I'm like, they wanted more money than they had for a security deposit. I'm like, wait, was it no wear and tear? It was no wear and tear. And it was all things that should have been taken care of, or, meaning included in the security,
Right.
or maybe there was some deduction that should have been made, fine. But to be charged more money,
On top
which
of
is,
that.
it's not unheard of, meaning unfortunately, sometimes it does happen where a tenant is abusive towards the property, right?
Mhm.
Leaves all kinds of stuff. All I have is one security deposit.
Mhm.
That's unfortunate because we can't. It doesn't. And what happens also, as you're asking, I know you're from a landlord's perspective, ideally you want to get the place, we call it turned over,
Mhm.
so re-cleaned and painted and rented right away. But what happens is when someone leaves all that stuff, it costs time because it takes time to fix, and then it costs money to fix more than normal. So unfortunately, it hurts everybody, right? Because it increases the cost of doing business. So the next person, it hurts the person who left because they don't get the security deposit back. It hurts the next person because they can't move in when they want to move in. It has the landlord having to charge more money. So it's bad juju all around.
Mhm. The bad
So
domino effect. Yeah.
yes, but people don't think about that.
Right.
Maybe they
Yeah.
will.
So maybe they will now.
And they'll
So you
buy a buck
definitely,
box, and the buck box is a big thing. We're going to sell buck boxes.
yeah. So you definitely want to leave your apartment as you found it. And that's really important to do as best to your ability. And something I learned, I did not know you could call the landlord or maybe someone in the landlord's office to come and do a pre move out.
Sure,
I think that's great. I would have done that.
sure. And
Or
also,
maybe even FaceTime them. Who
I want
knows?
to. I'll bring up another idea for you that you should think about. Let's say, Melissa, you know this. You're in an apartment, and your lease is up in the end of May, right?
Mhm.
And you're preparing to move, right?
Mhm.
You're preparing to move. And the landlord, I'm going to tell you, you didn't think about this, but what you want is you want to move out and you want your security deposit back as quick as possible, right? Okay.
Right.
The landlord wants the apartment back and they want to rent it as quickly as possible, right?
Of course.
So what if you helped show the apartment to prospective renters while you were there at the end? I'll bet the landlord would give you a discount or pay you some money to do that.
Is that not expected?
You don't have to do that. You could just move out.
I think I'm just a nice person because I definitely did that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's in the leases. A lot of time it's in the lease that says you have to cooperate.
Right.
But but there are services that give the tenants some money to show the place. Because by the way, you're not thinking like in reality, you're moving, you're packing boxes. The last
Right.
thing you want to do is show the place.
Of course.
And you don't want anyone in your house and all that. But
Gross.
if you're getting paid,
Right.
it might be good for everybody. So, you know, there might be an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? If you want to rent a place quicker, I'll fix it up. I'll get my security deposit back. Maybe you'll give me a few bucks, or I'll just move out at the end of the lease and you'll do whatever. So those are, that's an offer you could make to the landlord that would be very attractive.
It's also beneficial to the landlord because I'm providing you a staged apartment if it's nice, if there aren't boxes everywhere.
That's right. That's right. So
That's a win-win.
something to think about.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. I think this was our most off on tangent episodes, which I love. I think it's really great because there are so many things that go into, the relationship between tenant, landlord, and we're trying to cover everything here. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. We're getting there.
Everyone deals with that question of the security deposit. So it's a great question. It's a great topic. And I very often get those questions about, what do I do? This guy charged me, how do I handle that? Best advice is be prepared in advance, be organized, be thoughtful, be communicative.
I'm just gonna end on a one that happened to me that you'll laugh. In my Pittsburgh apartment, it was a townhouse, but it was it was a rental. And I took a video of everything. I didn't spackle all the holes, but I cleaned everything. And what they got me for was right? The
Those,
stove.
yeah,
What?
those landlords.
The landlords. No,
Yeah.
it was like a management company also. The stove, the oven, like where you pull it down, there was a silver lining on top.
Yeah.
The bottom right corner, I guess, was like bent a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like $200. And I was like,
Oh my God.
what?
That's
I
no
swear.
wear
And
and tear.
I didn't fight it. I don't know what to do. I didn't fight it back then.
Yeah.
So I was out. You could just bend it. Just bend it.
You bend it.
So that's what happened. And that was.
Yeah. If you would have had a pre-walk-in inspection or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I know. I opened every cabinet in my video. I took a video. But this is why we're trying to help people prepare for these kind of situations. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
This is great. So many things surrounding security deposits, and we'll touch it again one day.
Thank you.
For more episodes, please subscribe to Ask the Landlord on your favorite podcast platform. We'd appreciate it if you left a review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to watch the show, check out our Ask the Landlord YouTube channel. If you have a question for Albert, feel free to contact him on Instagram at @AskTheLandlord and check out his TikTok at @AskTheLandlord. Bridging the gap between landlords and tenants, this has been Ask the Landlord. Thanks for listening.